Hello, my friends. It's Tuesday afternoon. It's time for story time with Nana. So if you have littles, you might want to gather them. I have a new book that's new to me, at least. It's called Where's the Knight? And there is a castle, and there's all kinds of knights. Here's a knight climbing a vine up the wall. Here's a little boy, and it looks like his grandfather coming out of the castle with a little dog following. So let's find out about Where's the Knight? Every time George visited his grandfather, he found him working on a new, fantastic invention. Once he built a special boat. Another time he had a hot air balloon. Today it was a weird and wonderful flying machine. Ooh, that's pretty exciting. Have you ever wanted to fly? Grandfather looked very pleased with himself as he greeted George. Come and see what your brilliant grandfather has invented this time. Meg, the dog, looked doubtful. There's a pretty cool flying machine. The dog is kind of looking underneath it, wondering, what is that contraption? Before George knew it, he and Meg were sitting on board the strange machine. They were flying. Are we going on a long journey? George asked. More of a crusade, his grandfather chuckled as he unfolded a crumpled newspaper. There's a report about a castle in a faraway land, and rumor has it that there are still knights living there. But a rumor is only a rumor. We must see for ourselves if it's true. So off they go in that fancy flying machine to a castle. George felt as though grandfather's flying machine might stutter and fall to the ground at any moment. At last they spotted the remote castle far below. As they came to land, George thought he heard a clanking and a clashing of metal. Could that be the sound of knights fighting? It's just our noisy engine, Grandfather explained. It needs a splash of oil. There they are, coming in for a landing. And here is the great big castle. You find a knight? I see a knight right here. Is he on his horse? Oh, and here's another knight. Two knights, and they're on their horses. Abandoning their machine, they headed toward the splendid castle. Once again, George thought he could hear that clanking sound. It's just my keys jingling, Grandfather laughed, fishing them out of his waistcoat pocket. There they are. They've gotten out. There is a knight here poking at the airplane because he's never seen an airplane. What could that be? And they've gotten out. Here's a couple more knights. They're looking at this strange airplane. And there goes Grandfather and George and Meg the dog to the castle to look for the knights. Now, a moat surrounded the castle. George wondered how they were going to cross it when the drawbridge suddenly began to lower itself. George shivered. Surely this must prove that there were knights still living in the castle. But there was not a knight in sight. If they did find any, he hoped they were friendly. The drawbridge is probably so old and rusty that it just fell down, Grandfather explained. And you see A knight hiding in the wall there? Where else could there be a knight? Oh, and you see one in the castle wall window way at the top above the door of the drawbridge. Well, that's two more. Let's see, can we find any more? Oh, there's one up here, right there in the tower. We might find some more. Just inside the castle was a huge dining hall. Look, there are knights still living here, George gasped as he pointed a shaking finger towards the gallery. Those are just paintings, Grandfather chuckled. I want to believe there are knights here too, but we must find solid evidence. You see, there's pictures on the wall of the knights. But there's food on the table, so somebody must live in the castle. Where else can we see? Can we see any more? Oh, there's one standing up here in the tower on the stairway. Where else can... Oh, here's a little head popping out from underneath the table. He's hiding under the table. Where else? There's one here in the fireplace. Where else is there one? The dog is having a good time getting food off the table. Oh, there's another one hiding under the table. There's quite a few knights there. The next hall was full of weapons and armor. George was sure he could hear someone breathing and was worried that the suits might have knights inside them. Just to reassure him, Grandfather opened one of the helmets. See, nothing inside. Look at all those knights with their armor on. Grandfather doesn't think they're real inside. And he's opened up this one, and there's nobody inside. But can you see over here? I think there's somebody inside those knights. Those knights' shining armor. Moving on, they stumbled on a large iron ring in the floor. Grandfather tugged on it, revealing a trap door with a set of steps leading deep into the ground. In a castle, sometimes that would mean that there's a dungeon down there. Do you think there's knights hiding in the dungeon? Well, there's a big old knight standing right behind them. And you see that knight? And Grandfather and George are looking into the trap door. And there's some more over here being secret in the dark. It looks like the dungeon, Grandfather bellowed as he lowered his head into the dark hole. See, I told you, underneath there's a dungeon. There are all sorts of chains fixed to the wall, but there certainly aren't any knights attached to the chains. That's what Grandfather thinks. Grandfather led the way up a dark and twisting stairway. Unless I'm very much mistaken, this will take us right to the top of the castle, he said knowingly. George thought it was strange that they could see as they climbed the stone steps. Not one of the torches along the wall was lit, but he kept his thoughts to himself. Oh my goodness. Look at all those knights coming up the stairs, and they have lit torches. And there's Grandfather and George. They're climbing the steps. They arrived right at the top of the castle's highest tower. Whoa, that's a long ways up there. "We have an excellent view of the whole castle from up here," Grandfather exclaimed as he peered over the battlements. "But I can't see any knights down there. I'm afraid not a single one." Do you see? There is a couple here. There's one right here looking behind them, and several more behind him. There's one over here in the window. They're all over, aren't they? They're kind of being secret and quiet. "Not a single knight," repeated Grandfather, as he led George and Meg back to the flying machine. Then George heard a loud creaking noise behind them. Was the drawbridge being pulled up again? "Are you sure there aren't any knights in the castle, Grandfather?" George asked nervously. You see any? Oh, there's one. He's peeking around the mound of dirt. Where else? There's some up here. They don't have their big armor on, but I think they're the knights. "Very sure," Grandfather sighed. George wondered whether he should turn around just to check, but he decided not to. Grandfather had sounded so certain after all. So they just kept walking towards the flying machine. As the flying machine bumped along the ground, then started to lift into the air, Grandfather shook his head. "How foolish was I to think the rumor might be true," he said. "As if knights would still be alive today. George, I promise the next adventure I take you on won't be such a wild goose chase." Look at those knights. They're on their horses. They're doing their sword fights. Grandfather did not see any knights, but did you? How many did you count during the story? You can find the answer when Grandfather and George set off in their flying machine. There's another knight as they take off in the bushes. And here's another one down here. I don't know, we didn't count how many, did we? And on the back cover, there's even more knights by the river, hiding in the forest. The book says 100 knights are in this storybook. So that's a pretty cool book, all about knights and Grandfather and George trying to find him. Did George and Grandfather see any? They didn't, did they? The knights were hiding very well, but they were still there. They were there in the castle, hiding from George and his grandfather and Meg the dog. So that's my story today about knights. Where are the knights? We found quite a few. I'm not sure if we found 100. I hope you enjoyed our story. I hope you have a great afternoon, the rest of your day, and we'll see you next week for Nana's Story Time. Thanks for joining. Mwah.